I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Three parts of the United Kingdom focus today's show. We're looking at the Conference of the North. We're looking at the situation in Dover at the Channel crossings and to Westminster for Prime Minister's questions. All of it to come after the headlines.
Good morning. It is 9:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Rishi Sunak is likely to come under further pressure this afternoon at PMQs over the Conservative Party chairman's tax affairs. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister ordered an ethics inquiry to investigate how Nadhim Zahawi resolved a multi-million-pound tax dispute with HMRC while he was Chancellor. Mr Zahawi says he's confident he acted properly throughout. You can watch PMQs live here on GB News from midday. The United States and Germany are expected to make landmark pledges to supply advanced battle tanks to Ukraine. President Joe Biden's administration has indicated it will provide at least 30 of its Abrams tanks, while Germany is likely to confirm the delivery of 14 Leopard tanks later today. Ukraine believes a possible tank coalition could be a game changer in the conflict with Russia. A 14-year-old boy has been arrested after a teenage girl was stabbed at a school in Manchester. Officers arrived at Harwood High School yesterday afternoon. The girl was taken to hospital for treatment. Her injuries are said to be serious, but not life-threatening. Police are appealing for information. And Amazon workers are striking for the first time in the UK in a dispute over pay. GMB members at Amazon's Coventry warehouse are walking out in protest against a pay rise of 50 pence an hour, which the union has described as derisory because of the severe conditions workers face. Amazon says a tiny proportion of the workforce are involved, and they are proud to offer competitive pay. And thousands of Microsoft users around the world have been unable to access some of its services this morning. The company says they're investigating issues impacting Teams and Outlook, which are critical for businesses and schools. TV, online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. But now it is back to the briefing with Tom Harwood.
Good morning, it's 9:34 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. Now, first this morning, X-ray checks are set to be rolled out as soon as possible to assess the age of migrants after numerous high-profile cases of adults posing as children. This week, a man who posed as a 14-year-old, 5 years younger than his real age, was found guilty of killing aspiring Marine Thomas Roberts last year in a row over an e-scooter. It transpires that the perpetrator was a convicted murderer in Serbia, having shot and killed 2 fellow migrants on his way to England. Now, Chris Philp, the Minister of State for Crime, said it was a very powerful illustration of the need to reform our age checks on migrants. And turning to the journey here, after an extended hiatus of crossings due to bad weather, a huge surge in small boat crossings is underway in the English Channel this morning, as criminals, smuggling gangs, take advantage of a break in that bad weather. Let's cross now to Dover to see all of the latest with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. And Mark, before we get to these numbers that seem to be coming across, this fresh surge, what is the detail with regard to what the government want to do with new age checks?
Well, there's all kinds of scientific innovations that the government believes that they can use to more accurately detail the age of someone coming across, because quite frankly what you have at the moment are the people smuggling gangs telling people who may be in their late teens, early 20s, that if they can get away with it, looks-wise, that they should say that they are effectively a child, because if you're a child migrant, you enter a different system, really, than adult asylum seekers coming across. It's far tougher for the government to remove unaccompanied minors who are coming here and claiming asylum than it is, of course, to reject an adult asylum seeker and return them. So that's a problem that they face. And the system that they use, which is a social services sort of measurement of someone's age, unless someone actually looks very clearly as though they are much older than their sort of mid to late teens, then they should err on the side of the person claiming to be a child. So that leaves a situation where there are clearly, as far as the authorities are concerned, people here claiming to be children who are more adults-like, or at least in their late teens. And that's what we saw really in the most stark terms with this Afghan man who came across, claimed that he was a 14-year-old boy. At that time he was actually 18, now 21, convicted of murdering this aspiring Royal Marine in Bournemouth in March of last year. And to add to the absolute scandal that this story is, was the fact that this young man had also murdered 2 other people, according to the Serbian authorities, had been convicted in his absence by the Serbians of gunning 2 fellow Afghans down with an AK-47 in an apparent dispute over people smuggling, had also been convicted in Norway of drug dealing and denied asylum in that country, and also convicted of drug dealing in Italy. The difficulty that the authorities here have, though, Tom, is that these people, when they come across, they throw away their documentation, many of them, passports, other identifying documentation and mobile phones. So when this young man arrived, not only was it difficult to assess what his true age was, but it was very difficult to assess what his identity, his true identity was, because he gave a completely different name to the name he was using in Serbia when he committed those 2 previous murders.
Yes, very difficult to tell where people have come from, who these people are, check them up against systems and the like. But it is extraordinary that across the country, secondary schools, school children may well be sitting side by side with adults claiming to be children. It's a chilling image. But moving on, we're also seeing a fresh wave this morning, of course, of people crossing the Channel. Mark White, what numbers are we expecting coming across at this moment?
Well, sources have told us that up to 1,000 people could attempt to cross the English Channel today. Now, the reason why there's likely to be such a surge is because we have had for pretty much the last 2 or more months pretty horrific weather conditions in the English Channel because of the winter storms, much worse than last year, when actually over November, December, there was a lot of people who came across. In fact, November was the busiest month last year, not the same over the last couple of months, which has meant the very few weather windows that there are, then the criminal gangs will try and push these small boats off in numbers. Now, there is a weather window that opened up last night, and it's going to run throughout today before closing in again until at least the weekend, perhaps a bit longer. So we've had a surge in small boats pushing off from the beaches of France, 4 small boats so far that have been intercepted, and about 170 odd people taken here to Dover. Another boat, the occupants of that boat being transferred to a Border Force vessel as we speak. And there are several other small boat sightings out in the Channel. As I say, a very busy day expected in terms of those trying to cross illegally this stretch of water between France and the UK.
Now, just finally, of course, Rishi Sunak has made it one of his 5 top priorities to pass new laws to stop this scandal of small boats coming across, up to 1,000 just today, perhaps. When are we going to see these laws coming onto the statute books?
Well, those laws have already gone through in terms of making it illegal, of course, to cross the English Channel in a small boat with, going through these irregular routes. However, what they're not doing is prosecuting the vast majority of an individual on a boat. They're going after the so-called pilots, those who agree terms with the people smugglers for free passage if they steer the boat to the UK. Those are the ones that are being rounded up and prosecuted. So only a relatively small number compared to the numbers crossing, because obviously when they cross, they then claim asylum, and as such they're treated effectively as potential refugees, victims if you like, and they enter a different system there. But yes, you're right, Rishi Sunak says that it's part of his 5-pronged plan that this government plans to deliver in the months ahead. It's a top priority, and to that end, within days, the Channel operations will switch from the military, who are controlling things at the moment, back to Border Force under a new small boats operational command. That will bring Border Force, the military, the National Crime Agency together to be more efficient in the way they operate. But will that actually stop them leaving the beaches of France? Probably not. It will make them better at detecting them and picking them up. But there's still an awful lot of work to do to actually disrupt the people smuggling gangs across in France and to get the Rwanda policy up and running, which is still mired in now the latest appeal in the courts, and probably quite a few months to run before there's finally a conclusion on that.
It's interesting. There seem to be 3 main prongs to the 5 priorities that the Prime Minister set out: economic, health and migration. And if the Prime Minister can't get these numbers coming across the Channel down this year compared to last year, he's going to face a very, very tough election battle. It's one of those big markers he'll be judged against. But for now, Mark White, thank you so much for bringing us the very latest there down in Dover. Now, from the very south of England to the north, where the Conference of the North is underway. The meeting is an opportunity for titans of business and politics in the region to discuss challenges facing their region. And of course, the Prime Minister will be facing questions from the Commons during PMQs in the south as well. But let's first go to Manchester, where our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is. Good morning, Darren. Why has this been convened? Why has this new Convention of the North been convened?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Tom, with kind of this new constitutional arrangement, if you like, to a large degree. As always, as you well know, as sure as our viewers know as well, we haven't got a codified written constitution in the UK. It organically just changes quite a lot, it must be said. We've got devolution, of course, in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. We've had that since the late 90s. And then really under primarily David Cameron, actually, we've had quite a lot of devolution to different parts of England, kind of these metro-mers, if you like, in places like Tyneside and here in Manchester, in Liverpool, in the West Midlands as well, Yorkshire, it goes on. And they're trying to kind of work out, I think, a way of kind of how do they get together? How do they discuss the kind of these different component parts of England, what their priorities are, what they want and how they want to engage with the government? And that's effectively, I think, what this convention is. It's called the Convention of the North, but it must be said Andy Street, for example, who's the Mayor of the West Midlands, is here today. So it's not just confined to the North, but Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, is here. Lisa Nandy, his opposite number, is as well. And kind of levelling up is at the heart of what's been discussed in many ways, Tom, here in Manchester. Effectively, what the regional mayors are saying is that what we do not want is what happened last week, where you've got local authorities and local projects scrapping around, trying to get funding from this levelling up funds, competing against one another. What they want is more money in places like here in Manchester, where Andy Burnham and others get to make the decisions at a local level. They say they know the local areas best, they know where the money's best spent, and what they want is the devolution not just of powers but also money as well. And I think that is something that Michael Gove may well and the government may well be open to. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. He is speaking at the same time as PMQs is on, but it'll be interesting to see what the government's response to all of that is.
It is interesting. We sort of are living through this sort of halfway house period where there's been devolution to some local authority areas and others are still waiting for their devolution deals. We've got this sort of patchwork of different levels of devolution across the country as well. It's interesting this morning to see Andy Burnham asking for some sort of new Barnett formula for the North. Do you think that that's an idea that has any legs at all?
I'm not entirely sure it is. I mean, the Barnett formula, many people feel it is quite outdated as it is. It's a formula that effectively benefits places like Scotland, Wales and indeed Northern Ireland, but proportionally they receive more taxpayer money than other parts of England. Now, why is that? Well, traditionally they have been less well-off parts of the United Kingdom. Could that work here in the north of England? I mean, clearly they would like it to work here. And in the end, there is a lot of regional disparity in the UK, there is no doubt about that, and a lot of that disparity is found here in the northwest, in the northeast and elsewhere, though places in the south will equally claim it is found there as well. The southwest of England, for example, is one of the least prosperous parts of the UK. Should taxpayers in the southeast and London be subsidising them? Well, in effect, they already are. I mean, you have to remember, even without the Barnett formula, areas of social deprivation do receive more government funding than those that are more prosperous. In the end, as you say, it's all terribly complicated, and this is the problem with kind of Britain's constitutional setup. Yes, there are benefits to it. It's great in some ways that it is slightly organic, but in the end, each government kind of slightly makes it up as they go along. And I think those campaigns for more money at a regional level will only grow, whether it's a Barnett formula or something else. Clearly, many people here frustratedly want to see more government funding, more government help as part of this levelling up agenda than the current government's providing.
Well, Darren, thank you so much for bringing us that very latest there from the Convention of the North, taking place today in Manchester, bringing together, of course, lots of those regional leading figures that we have become so used to talking about in our political vernacular since devolution really got going. But elsewhere, of course, this morning, a distinct lack of government media round is raising eyebrows as Nadhim Zahawi's tax affairs continue to cause problems for the Prime Minister in Westminster. Tory peer Lord Harwood has suggested that Zahawi should step aside for at least the duration of this investigation, and no doubt questions surrounding the new investigation into Nadhim Zahawi's conduct will dominate Prime Minister's questions today, as they've dominated so many questions across the media this week. Well, there's so much to digest. I'm delighted to be joined now by Jim Pickard, the Chief Political Editor at the Financial Times. And Jim, can we just start very back to basics with this story? What is Nadhim Zahawi accused of?
So, in the year 2000, Nadhim Zahawi and Stephen Shakespeare set up YouGov, which is a very successful polling company. And instead of Nadhim Zahawi having shares, 42.5% of the company went to an offshore vehicle controlled by his father. And the Tory chairman tries to suggest that this was respecting the huge contribution that his father had made in terms of a bit of seed capital and advice. But the problem is that people at YouGov don't actually remember the father doing anything for YouGov, and therefore there is a suspicion that this was a way to not pay full tax. And he himself has basically admitted that the penalty, or rather the money that he paid to HMRC in a settlement last summer, was related to the shareholding in YouGov. But none of this has been spelt out explicitly. He's trying to maintain this idea that it's some kind of mistake and a bit of confusion, rather than a deliberate attempt to not pay tax, designed many, many years ago. And as for the penalty, he's still not explicitly said that a penalty was paid by HMRC. The Guardian revealed that a penalty of about £1 million was paid. Allies of Zahawi, you can guess who that might be, have confirmed to the media that yes, there was a penalty, but it's not really full transparency yet.
And I suppose that's what we're really expecting over the course of this now independent investigation into Zahawi, the first independent investigation carried out by Sir Laurie Magnus, the new ethics czar of the Prime Minister. Do we have any idea of the timescale that this investigation may well take up?
No, so these questions were asked at the lobby in Downing Street yesterday morning and Monday morning, and no specific answer has been forthcoming. It could take weeks, it could take months. And if you think of the parallel investigation into Dominic Raab, which is being carried out by someone else who's a sort of employment expert in the law, you know, that started months ago. There's no sign of that ending either. But I think, you know, one of the things about this Zahawi tax affair is that I was chatting to a former senior cabinet minister yesterday who said that loads of people have run-ins with HMRC. Quite often HMRC gets it wrong. It's not that unusual for someone to have a dispute with the HMRC, but the way this was handled by Zahawi, not admitting that he was under investigation, claiming it was a smear, threatening the independent newspaper which first exposed this, threatening Dan. When I say threatening, I mean with legal action, just to be specific, threatening Dan Needle, a tax expert who's been writing about this. He has not really carried himself with great decorum since this first emerged last July.
And yet, I suppose, when we're looking at the scale of the issue, perhaps it's the way that this looks more than the entire particulars of what has gone on. He thought he had acted within the law. HMRC thought something else. They've come to some sort of settlement over the summer. But now it's all bubbling up in a big, big way. What's the political implication for this? How do you expect Sir Keir Starmer to approach Prime Minister's questions at midday?
Yeah, you're right. We're in the political zone here where, I mean, Labour feels like it's been handed an open goal. I don't know specifically what questions Starmer is going to ask at PMQs, but I will come very close to eating my hat, but not eat my hat, if he doesn't lead off on Zahawi, because we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We've got inflation over 10%. We've got people's mortgages going through the roof. We've got a rise in food banks. We've got an awful lot of people struggling out there. And therefore, you know, voters are very interesting when it comes to wealth and prosperity and entrepreneurship. They actually quite like MPs to have had some real life experience. They like it when their MPs have actually lived a little and made some money, especially if they're a self-made entrepreneur like Nadhim Zahawi. But when they're not paying taxes, you know, a few £100 here or there, or a few grand here or there, maybe the public turn a blind eye. But it's the scale of this. It's the idea that you could have £3.7 million on a £27 million profit that was made on this business, that you would be greedy enough to not pay £3.7 million of it. That sees as an open goal for them politically when people are struggling.
And yet, there may be the argument that people want to hear politics focus on those big issues, focus on the sluggish economic growth of this country, focus on the reform that is necessary to get us back to a level of prosperity, or even a higher level of prosperity. Isn't there a risk here for the opposition that focusing on investigations into the chairman of a political party is missing the bigger issues that actually could make people better off?
So you have a point there, Tom, but I think what Labour will do if they're canny here is they will link the real life issues and the fact that people are struggling and the fact that the public sector is lacking in funding. They will link that to rich Tory MPs or donors or anyone else who don't pay their full share of tax. You can draw a very straight line between this. You can point out, if you're the Labour opposition party, that £3.7 million would give pay rises to an awful lot of nurses or public sector workers, should you choose to. I think that is probably how they will get around the idea of, is this just Westminster bubble navel gazing?
And yet, when the Labour Party left office in 2010, it was only around 1 in 5 in terms of the total tax take that was contributed by the top 1%. That's grown by 1/3 over the last decade. The top 1% now pay almost 1/3 of the entire nation's tax. I suppose it's an important contextualiser in this conversation. I'm afraid we've run to the end of the show there, Jim, but thank you so much for joining us here on The Briefing. Really appreciate your time this morning. That's it for us. We're back at 9:30 tomorrow. Up next, it's Bev Turner Today.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Well, a change today. We've got a band of rain pushing south across the UK. Brighter skies following, still rather chilly, particularly across the southern England. Taking a look at the bigger picture, this is that weather front which is bringing the rain slowly slipping its way southwards as we go through the day. However, high pressure nearby, meaning this weather front is largely on the weak side and shouldn't cause any issues. A cloudy start though this morning, still some mist and fog patches first thing, freezing in places too. This band of rain across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, slowly slipping southwards as we go through the day. Brighter skies following though, but also scattering of showers, increasing winds across northern Scotland here too. Staying cloudy across southern England through the day, some places staying dry but still cold, 6 or 7 at best. Feeling fresher across northern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England too, where here temperatures reach 15, 16 degrees across northern parts of Scotland. Through into the evening time, that rain continues to clear southwards, so we'll see starry skies for many, 1 or 2 showers possible down the east coast as we head into the early hours. But with those clear skies, we will see a frost developing as temperatures fall down to 2 or 3 degrees in places, so a patchy frost to start Thursday morning. But a dry start for many, some sunshine, particularly across the west, and the east seeing a little bit more cloud as we go through the day. With a northerly breeze, we will see a few showers moving down the east coast at times, but lots of places staying dry, the best of the unbroken sunshine further west you are. And a fresher feeling day for everyone, temperatures generally around average. They're in the sunshine, not feeling too bad, highs around 8 or 9 degrees across some exposed western coasts. As we head then through towards the end of the week and into the weekend, high pressure always nearby, so it generally stays dry. The cloud will come and go at times. The risk of a little light rain, particularly across the northwest, and temperatures generally around average. See you again soon.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous. Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your